I still have a lot of folks in the Gen Xers, even some couple baby boomers who tune into my podcast every now and then too. So it's really good to get down to the niche, so that way you'll become that magnet to attract the folks you want down the road, and even the folks that'll really contribute to your success.
Well, today we're joined by my friend Dom out of beautiful Maryland. He is a John Maxwell coach. He does speaking. He's written a couple books. He has his own podcast. He's got a lot of stuff going on. We dive into marketing and leadership and all those different things. So stay tuned in just a few moments for the Finally Marketing That Works podcast.
All right. Well, hello and welcome to another edition of the Finally Marketing That Works podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I got a new friend with me today. His name is Dom, and he's over all the way in Maryland today. Dom, how are you, sir?
Man, my man, the mighty Mitchell, I'm doing good, man. Doing good, finally. I found some marketing that works, apparently. That's what we all want, right?
We all want that. Sometimes it's hard to find, but we found it. I heard you also found some cicadas over there in Maryland, too, it sounds like, right?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We went from the land of charm, crime, and crabs, and to the land of charm, crime, crabs, and cicadas, yeah. Freaking insects that appear every 17 years on the East Coast in the state of Maryland for some strange reason. I don't know. I don't know why they wait 17 years to come out of the ground, but okay. They're here. They're strange bugs. They don't harm people. They just like to stick to people since they're blind. That's the other thing. It's like, imagine a bunch of Stevie Wonders and Ray Charleses flying around and they can't find their way. Probably a bad analogy, but yeah, that's basically what they are. Blind insects. They come out the ground every 17 years just to reproduce and have a giant moaning session collectively. Especially when it's extra hot outside and the sun's outside. It's like a dog in heat multiplied 10x style. It's good stuff.
Man, it still just blows my mind to think about cicadas and how 17 years under the ground, and they've just been there this whole time. Like, while I was like 17 years ago, I was 11 years old, and you and I had chatted like we were kids. It's like the last time they were in there, and like they've been in the ground this entire time, just there. The eggs. It's just weird to me to think that they can last that long and survive through winters and summers. And you guys have brutal winters up there in Maryland. So I mean, yeah, it's crazy. It's just crazy. It's what an interesting thing that God created to make a little cicada 17 years under the ground like that.
It's definitely interesting. Yeah, I'm probably, if I was like really curious and if I decide to remember if that day comes, it's like, hey God, so why'd you make these bugs? And he'll be like, hey, why question me, buddy? And I'll be like, all right, cool. I'll keep my mouth shut. Get back to praising you when that day comes. Like, yay, God is awesome. I want to ask no more questions.
So, Don, when I was reading up on your bio, I know you're a John Maxwell certified coach. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. So how long have you been doing that?
My goodness, that's really started back, I'd say, August 2019. I mean, that's when it really became official in my mind, because that's when I went to the event down in Florida. Got certified, got hosed down with content like a fire hose. It was like drinking from a hot fire hose that was the size of the Great Wall of China. Had like a mild little headache because it was so much darn content. And it did feed me well too, so yeah. So got fed well, both, well, actually in all three ways, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And my goodness, with that, been able to secure more speaking engagements across the board, and heck, even with the coaching, it's great, it's fabulous, but sometimes like it can be hard to really balance it out because I'm still doing some full-time employment on top of it. Because, as they say, you don't quit your day job at first. Don't be so stupid, because that's the thing about that event. It was so darn powerful that as soon as you leave the door, it's like, man, I could take on the freaking world.
Yep.
Like I could go in the Fight Club and fight like 30 guys at once. I have the freaking giant Masamune Japanese sword. I'm the samurai. And it's like, no, come back to earth a little bit, buddy. It's not always gonna be sugar and rainbows. There's gonna be some some bear traps along the way, and you got to be able to duck and dodge them and prepare yourself. So yeah, yeah, man.
So for you, what have been some of those bear traps that you've ran into then since you've been certified? Going on, gosh, 2 years already. What are some of those traps you've ran into?
The easiest one is picking which lane to stay in, because when I first got there, my main thing was the 15 laws of growth, and just speaking on that because I had a speech that I made up beforehand called the 5 C's to explosive growth, and borrowing, I'd say around at least out of those 15 laws, I believe 2 or 3 of them actually start with the letter C, law of curiosity and the law of contribution. So it's like, hey, well, I'm already lying because he's like my favorite author of all time. Even before we even pressed record, we could talk about all day how great John Maxwell is, one heck of a great dude. And really just the pitfalls of just picking a lane, staying in it, and trying not to get too bogged down with the content, because they give you access to so much content. And the thing is, there's even levels to it, at least still at the time of this recording, where there's the entry level, you pay a certain fee, and you're allowed to teach 6 different things and whatever else they decide to add to it. Then the mentorship, where you're allowed to teach even more of John's material. But there's like the final level in terms of the membership, is where there's the club level, where you basically have access to every single piece of the content and more content. But the thing is, you're basically kind of like employed for the company in a way, because every time you speak, you have to set this particular fee, whether it's like doing a leadership game with an organization, or like coaching client, or maybe some training, and then the Maxwell team gets a cut of that back into the business. So there's different levels to that. I'm like in the middle of the sandwich, the mentorship, where I just have the access to the content at a higher level, and just basically using some of that in my own life, as opposed to that extra high level where it's like, dude, I don't really want to do all of that. Because the thing is, when it comes to certifications, a lot of people, especially in the JMT, and heck, even beyond, is the fact that they think that, oh, you get certified in a weekend, you're ready to take on the world, where it's like, no, I actually had a business beforehand of speaking, book writing, publishing, and my own podcast a couple years before actually joining JMT. This is just something in addition to what I'm already doing. It's not the be all end all. It's like, hey, I have this great big sword and I can take on the masses. Like, no, it's just something additional from a guy that I highly respect, and the content that I really kind of already teach in a way, and just adding on to it. So being able to really picking one lane, staying with it, and then of course, like getting started too, and heck, even having accountability buddies. That's actually worked out too, because there's also an optional accountability program for 60 days where you gather with about a good 2 other JMTers, and you got this whole triangle of accountability here. It's almost like you're Phil Jackson with the triangle system here, except you're not going for the NBA championship. We're all going for our separate championships. So yeah, that's probably the main bear trap, just picking which lane to stay in and sticking in that lane, and then taking the action and not being paralyzed by analysis.
I think that's a thing a lot of people struggle with, though, because I've struggled with the same thing this last year. As when everything with COVID was going on, I'd taken some agency training, and they were talking about picking a niche to focus on for like targeting, instead of going. And I think a lot of agencies have this issue in the marketing world of, oh, we help everybody. It's like my thing. The most, you go to like a networking group, like who's your target market? Oh, everybody, like a chiropractor, everybody with a spine, and an eye doctor, everybody with and I hate it. It just makes me cringe when people are like, oh, everybody's a potential client. I'm like, I get it, but you got to have what's that target that's like the easier sell, And so I started looking at all the clients I had. I had in so many different verticals, and it was like just a mess. And so I was like, man, I really need to focus in on. So this past year, I've started focusing, not to say I wouldn't take other industries, but focusing on roofing and schools are 2 that I just really started to focus on, because we were doing really, really good work for the clients we had in those verticals. So I started going, I'm going to go after those verticals specifically, instead of going after kind of just everybody in general. And we were having really good success with that. And so, but it's hard, because you kind of think when you pick a lane, you're going to well, what about all those other highways over there that I'm missing out on because I'm only focusing on this one road? But it's hard. It still is hard to me to think about it for myself, but there's so much you can do on just that one lane, and it's easier to I mean, I'm not a speaker. I'm not and I don't know your world very well, but I would say if I'm somebody looking to hire a speaker and I want to hire somebody that speaks specifically on CEO leadership, well, that might be one specific lane that maybe you picked or something. And I go, oh, this guy speaks exactly on what I'm looking for. I don't just look to hire a John Maxwell speaker, period. Like, I don't know if that helped or whatever, but I feel you, brother. I feel you, because I had the same issue this whole last year. So what is that lane? You said you're having trouble with that one. Do you have that lane picked out, and what is it?
Yeah, the speaking lane is the main lane for me, and I build myself as a self-leadership trainer. Because that's the other thing too, you're right, like it's always good to niche down. The thing is, like the whole reaching everybody, there's like two schools of thought for that. Like the niche thing in the marketing, that's always something. That's like the foundation, because if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. But the thing is, as you find your niche, other people outside of your targeted niche start coming to you like a magnet. So I guess that's the reason why they want folks to drill down. So self-leadership is my lane, and what I usually do is I like to target schools, especially, heck, even corporations who may have new, like leaders who may have just got out of college, or they maybe even got out of high school, and they need some leadership development as well, because that's really one of the things that helped me out. Heck, even I learned this from 𝗧𝗶𝗽 if you as an option for really just niching down if you want as a start, and that is to serve the person who you were a couple years ago. And when he said that, I'm like, that makes so much freaking sense, because the 21-year-old Dom, heck, even the 25-year-old Dom is different from the 29-year-old Dom. So it's like the guy who just found personal development in guinea pig mode. What would basically be the perfect avatar be? Young guy, millennial, early 20s, late 20s, most likely early 20s, loves personal development. Usually what do young guys think? They want to be basically one, if not all three things: paid, laid, and made, right? So it's like helping folks get into that specific niche and just giving the target audience what they need in that area. And then other folks will be drawn to you like a magnet. So it's really kind of in reverse. There is a niche, but sometimes there isn't a niche, because other people, if you are so good at what you do, it's basically like a fire. They're coming to see you, watch you burn metaphorically, and give that warmth to them. So it's like, even though, heck, even like with what I do with my podcast, like the original goal is to interview a bunch of self-published authors, but connecting with so many people across the globe, picking up other authors who have books with big-time publishers, they still have great stories to share. And even though my target audience is basically millennials, I still am an old soul and a sonic youth, because I still have a lot of folks in the Gen Xers, even some couple baby boomers who tune into my podcast every now and then too. So it's really good to get down to the niche, so that way you'll become that magnet to attract the folks you want down the road, neck, even the folks that'll really contribute to your success. That's really what it's really all about.
And the companies that I think have done really good at the niching down, like they do what they do best, is obviously Chick-fil-A. I think everybody can agree that Chick-fil-A, they don't sell burgers. It is chicken, and you got grilled and fried, and do you want it with a bun on it, or do you want it in nugget form? I mean, it's very, very simple menu, and they're just super successful. And then the second one would be In-N-Out Burger, which, I live in Florida, so we don't have In-N-Out Burger in Florida, but we were just, we took a drive across the country, and we're visiting, because my wife is always like, we gotta go to In-N-Out. And I pull up, and I'm just blown away at how simple that menu is. And if anybody listening doesn't know it, just Google In-N-Out menu and just look at it. It is, do you want 1 patty, 2 patty, or 3 patty? And that's kind of all you get to choose from. And you get the same toppings. Do you want lettuce, tomato? That's it. And they got 3 shakes. They got some drinks and fries. And that's it. There's nothing else that you can get from that place. There's no wraps. There's no chicken. And I'm like, man, but the line, I had to wait 45 minutes to get my wife a burger one night because she wanted one, and we backed out. And it was at 9:30 at night. So they know what they're doing. They just kept it simple. We are a burger company. And I always kind of laugh. I mean, they're still in business, but I look at Burger King and I go, I will say I do like a good Whopper every now and again, but I'm obviously a big, Chick-fil-A fan, but I look at Burger King, and I thought a while back they had they have the chicken fries, and then they came out with their own chicken sandwich, and then they have obviously burgers, and I think they even launched tacos or hot dogs at one point or something. I was like, what are they doing? Like, they have just random food on their menu, which is just confusing. What is Burger King? I mean, their name's Burger King, but they have everything. So it's just, that's one of the companies I feel like they're like trying to find themselves still in a way. But yeah, you don't need a whole bunch of stuff, and that's something I've also dealt with the agency too. Is, do I offer everything, or do I offer 3 packages, or just a couple few services and be really, really good at the services I offer instead of being okay with all the other services? I don't want to be one of those type of agencies, but it's hard. It just really is hard. So I appreciate you being honest and sharing your struggles with that. And it's funny, you kind of get from the time frame of when you got certified, boom, COVID happens, but kind of right after that. How was it getting certified and getting all this training, and then COVID happened, and then you having all this knowledge? Were you doing virtual speaking engagements? Were you still getting clients through COVID, and how did kind of all that work out?
Oh man, like COVID, to be honest, with all the evil nonsense with that darn pandemic, the evil Grim Reaper year 2020, I actually grew out. Last year was actually my biggest year business-wise, to be honest. That's the funny thing about it. Like, as the thing was, I was able to do more of my podcast, my Going North podcast, able to get more guests for that, and I upped the level of content. I basically leveled the level of content I was pushing out. I interviewed over 34 authors, which is my biggest year yet. Yeah, and this year I'm probably going to double, if not triple that, because I just this month started uploading a new episode every Monday, Thursday, and Saturdays, because I just kept getting people, and a lot of people are now more aware of podcasts. They're like, hey, Dom's got this show. Wait, he's got 300+ episodes. Hey, let me get on there. And that led me to building partnerships with people and doing virtual summits with people and just guesting on other people's shows to do some more book sales, and heck, even did a side project, an audiobook project, where a guest actually hired me to read his book, and I was like, wow, and I got a nice little paycheck from that really just helped out a brother. So yeah, COVID actually was good for me business-wise, and just developing myself and really putting more content out there, because with everybody being stuck at home and everybody else trying to figure out how to start, that was the chance for me to really put the pedal to the metal, throw some gasoline on this fire here, and just ramp it up and really rev it up. And this year it's just gonna keep happening with the show, and I even got a 4th book coming out this year too, because one of the major things, this kind of even, I guess this could probably even work for the marketing piece, is the fact that one guest in particular, he's a certified John Gordon speaker, and the John Gordon program is apparently a lot different from the JMT program, but it's basically where he actually noted that he would write down 3 things: what brings him happiness, what brings him peace, and what brings him money. And one of the major things about the money piece, my paychecks, they come from speaking and writing. Those are 2 major things. That's the day job. My side also, it's either speaking or writing. And speakers, like, of course, the keynotes and things like that, that's probably 60% of their income, but the other 40% is if you're offering suite packages. Do you have books? Do you have audio programs? Do you have online courses? Do you have something, do you have derivatives of yourself that people can take home with them to take it with them on the go? And that's really the major thing. So heck, even helping folks get down with that niche, like, all right, so what are my most productive habits? What have brought me the most success? And focusing on those 3 things that bring you that thing that you need. So yeah, COVID's actually been pretty good for me. I said my digital business was gonna freaking explode. Now, granted, did it explode as big as I would have loved it to? It didn't, because I got back into gaming too. I got a little distracted, I ain't gonna lie. I bought a freaking PS4, and I never thought I ever would, and then I just got back into gaming, and that threw off some of my time a bit. But hey, just use that as a time to multitask, to prepare for the guests for the podcast, listen to other podcasts, and up my brain, keeping the Google Doc up and learning stuff while I was playing the games too. So did it explode as well as I would have liked it to? No, but I still made some headway into the business with the pandemic.
One day, maybe I'll have to be a guest on your podcast when I write a book. But what I will say is I wrote a book, but it's not the book you're probably thinking of in your head. It's a children's book. So I don't know if it's going to meet the criteria you're looking for, because I've always loved children's books. My mom and dad, read to me my whole life growing up as a child. And so now I have a son who'll be 2 in September, and I love to read to him. Finally, he's starting to get
nice.
Really, he actually will bring a book and go, please, please. And I'll read his book to him. And so I have 28 or 38 titles of books that have all the ideas done, but I've written one. So one's done. And I hope to, I mean, I don't know how I want to do it. Maybe this is a separate conversation, because I'm thinking just Amazon for print on demand. Because I'm not I'm not expecting to retire off of it. I really just want to have kids be able to get enjoyment with their families from the books, because they're all going to rhyme. So this one rhymes. It's called Sebastian the Speedy Squid. That's this. And I'm a huge alliteration fan, so every book is all about alliteration for the name. And so it's fun. It's a fun book, and I was like, man, I hope people get as much enjoyment as I get out of it, just reading it. And so that'll be a separate conversation. But that's the type of books, man. I love children's books, and just the memories I've made over my family and my son. So stay tuned for that one. But so I'd love to switch gears just a tiny bit, talk a little bit more about marketing and what have you done I know it's only been a few years, but what have you tried in those years for marketing yourself and your business that hasn't worked? And what have you done recently or whenever that has worked? I'd love to see if you have any of those type of stories that you can share of man, this was I wasted this much money or this much time over here, but man, this one worked really, really good.
One of the biggest things that's helped me with marketing is, of course, the elephant in the room is social media. And the social media platforms that have worked for me, I'd have to say, would be Facebook. I probably spend most of my time on Facebook because I've been on that one the longest, since high school. My God, and it's still around, which is amazing considering how MySpace went to the graveyard. Even though the owner did become a millionaire when someone else bought it from him. So it's not a total loss, but so Facebook is definitely one. I actually use my personal page for business and just sharing memes and whatnot, because funny enough, I'm not sure if you heard of her, Natalie Jill, this woman in her 40s. Who knows? She might be 50 now, I don't know. But yeah, she's in her 40s and she doesn't even look for it. She could pass for 28. And she has 1 million followers on her public Facebook page. And her husband, which runs her marketing and all the back end of her fitness business, he, out of curiosity, was wondering, how much would it cost to reach the entire fan base? And it was going to cost him $64,000 to reach just the folks that already liked the darn page after the algorithms changed, especially last year when they changed for the worse too. So after hearing that, I'm like, I'm going to use my personal page as basically my business page for the podcast and everything else I do, because that's really where it comes. Because people, even though they may not like your stuff, even though they'll see your flyer for your Thursday event on the following Wednesday with that darn timeline, folks are still paying attention to your stuff. And sometimes it takes people 7 times to see something and actually understand it, where they actually press the buy button. And funny enough, a guy I used to work with, he was like, man, and funny enough, I shared somebody else's post that wasn't even my post. And he was like, man, Dom, I haven't followed you, man. All right, I'm going to buy a copy of the book. And he sent a screenshot of him buying my second book. And I'm like, wow, shoot, this is freaking awesome. And we basically just connected again after that. And it was freaking great. And it was like, wow. So personal page for basically the business, because even though you're only limited to 5,000 friends, the reach is still a lot. All right, now granted, I still have a business page, and I use it to run ads, targeted ads, of course. Heck, even one thing to keep in mind, the classic Ben Franklin quote, writing leads to wealth. Occasional articles that I used to write for every now and then, based off of my show for SEO purposes, to get out not only myself out there, but also the guests that I've had on my show out there in the past, and then using targeted ads in the guest city. So that way it's like, oh yeah, this Nancy, I know her. She's out in Colorado. Yeah, she's on this thing. Let me check it out. And it would link to their site and their podcast episode too. So that worked too. So targeted ads, especially since it was with folks who've already been on my platform and they have all, we already kind of have a rapport and whatnot. So tapping into your network. Twitter's also great, especially with the correct hashtags. If you're in the space of marketing as a writer, the hashtag of writing community is always good. There's actually a happy place in Twitter for those who call Twitter a dumpster fire. It's actually not that bad. If you stay, if you know what you like, if you stay in a certain part of it, you'll be fine. Like, the writing community is freaking awesome because they're finding ways to procrastinate on writing the next book and just using hashtag writers community for inspirational sayings and occasional writers lists where they try to lift each other up by following each other's accounts on Twitter to give them a way to distract themselves from finishing their work. Like, that's been good. Let's see. Word of mouth is always good. That's like the best before COVID. Book events, using my book as a business card, heck, even doing book swaps with fellow authors has been good too. That actually led to a speaking engagement, I'd say around 6 months after we did the trade, because one book event in particular, I was at the Maryland Book Fair, but I was so desperate to get a table, I signed up for the Friday day because all the Saturday dates were taken, and I don't do Sundays for that because I don't want to be in no hot sun on a Sunday when I'm a church boy. So it's like, let me go Friday. And I only sold 4 books that day, so I was still in the red for how much I paid for the table. Then one lady I actually traded a book with, she hired me to speak and gave me an honorarium that paid well over what I lost that day. So that's the other thing too. You have to realize that it's a long game too, and you have to always focus on the payoff because you're not all. It's great to get that immediate attention, that immediate noise. It's like, oh shoot, this person's got something good going on. At the same time, you have to have the mindset of it being a marathon and being happy with focusing on the long term with it and the payoff.
So you've had success in a lot of different areas. It looks like specifically, obviously, social media, and then the word of mouth, just being a friendly guy that you can have a conversation and talk with people. So, which, I mean, word of mouth and that referral business, that's like the best, I feel like the best type of marketing if you are good with people and can get in front of people. So that's fantastic. So for anybody listening, if they're wanting to buy your book, get in touch with you, what is one of the best ways that they can do that?
Sure thing. Best ways to head over to 𝗏𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 to it. And there's a free gift too for your listeners, a nice little ebook. If folks made it all the way to the end and they subscribe to the show and subscribe to the email list, you get a nice little free ebook as well.
Well, Dom, thank you so much for your time, and continue writing. And I wish you nothing but the best in your podcast and your business with being a member of the John Maxwell team.
Well, as usual, I hope you learned at least one thing from today's episode with Dom. And if you're interested in getting in touch with him, I encourage you to just tune into his podcast, the Going North podcast, and hear about what he has to say about leadership and everything he's learned from being a coach with the John Maxwell team. He knows his stuff. He's a great guy. So please get connected with him if you're in need of his services. As always, we'll be here next week with another awesome guest. So we'll see you next time on the Finally Marketing That Works podcast. We'll see you then.